Hi, my name is Catherine Navarijo, and I'm going to be teaching polygamy in the United States. So let's get to learning. So, introduction to polygamy. Polygamy, according to Merriam-Webster, is when a marriage in which a spouse of either sex may have more than one mate at the same time, and it's practiced all over the world for religious traditions and purposes, and it's mainly practiced in countries in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. However, it's very unacceptable in the United States. In some states, there are some states currently practicing polygamy, and there's a raising question of how people can report polygamous activity. So, you, the people, are going to learn specifically how the history of polygamy developed in the United States, the legality of polygamy in the US, and also the most popular polygamous groups that are still active today. So, the history of polygamy in the United States. It all started by a guy named Joseph Smith. He was born in Vermont on December 23rd, 1805, and he's considered an American prophet and the founder of the Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the LDS for short. In the 1830s, he began having revelations for men especially, and he taught that families can be together by sealings or religious rites. And he also references in his teachings that the prophet Abraham from the Bible's Old Testament, because the prophet Abraham had many wives, and he wanted to include that in his teachings for reliable importance. And the quote that I'm about to say really was a carrying notion of polygamy and how it really carried on and influenced a lot of converts. So it says that a righteous man could help numerous women and children go to heaven by being sealed in a plural marriage. And with that motivation, Joseph Smith carried out his own teaching by marrying his first wife, Fanny Alger, in 1835. And with that, this has sort of caused a domino effect in which Joseph Smith will be marrying many wives in the near future. And as I said earlier, his teachings attracted many male converts, and with that, it's like the amount of converts surpassed the amount of converts in any other religion at the time. So the influx of converts, of male converts especially, was increasingly rapid. And polygamy really became part of the Mormon doctrine in 1843. And to note, Joseph Smith began the fundamental teaching of the Mormon Church, but the practices of polygamy became a branch of. So after several years later, and today, people who are a part of the Mormon Church don't consider the practice of polygamy a part of Mormonism. So the legality of polygamy in the United States. The legality of polygamy in the United States really didn't start until there was an act passed, which was called the Edmunds Anti-Polygamy Act of 1882, and it declared that polygamy is a felony and it illicit cohabitation, and states can reinforce restrictions if the person practices or believes in polygamy. And several years before that, there was a very famous Supreme Court case called Reynolds versus the United States in 1879, and this really started off when a bunch of polygamous believers said that the U.S. federal government was infringing their First Amendment right to freely practice their religion. But in conclusion to this Supreme Court case, the U.S. did not breach the Free Exercise Clause in the First Amendment, and the reasoning behind it is that the government can intrude an individual's belief when the religious practice violates a notion of health, safety, and morality, or this is also known as the police powers. And with the Edmunds Anti-Polygamy Act and the Reynolds versus the United States Supreme Court case, it added more enforcements on polygamy since it could lead to child abuse, statutory rape or underage marriage, welfare fraud, incest, corrupted businesses, and if you were caught, the penalties for polygamy can be imprisonment, hefty fines, or both at the same time. And the rising question that people want to know is how to report polygamy. So in order to report polygamy, report to dependable law enforcement so they could confiscate the area, or you could request protection. The reason why people should report polygamy to dependable law enforcement is because some of the local law enforcement surrounding the polygamous communities are familiar with the area, and they think that the people who are practicing polygamy are not creating a problem or creating a threat. But in society today, that is a problem and it shall be dealt with. So if you see polygamous activity, report to dependable law enforcement. So current polygamous groups, I'm going to be mentioning two polygamous groups that are still active today in the United States, and these two groups are pop up in the media more often, and these are more prominent in the U.S. today. So one of them I'm going to be talking about is the Fundamental Church of Latter-day Saints, or the FLDS. Its headquarters are in Arizona and Utah, and the current leader is Warren Jeffs. He has at least 70 wives, and along with the wives and including the children, especially the daughters, have to wear dresses that are closely resemble to the ones that were worn in the 1800s. And along with that, or continuing on, Jess was charged with sexual assault by impregnating a 12-year-old girl, which was considered one of his wives. And in prison, with that, he was sentenced to prison. While in prison, the FLDS community still consider him as a prophet. But along with that, being charged and being sentenced to prison, he was also sentenced to life in prison. And even in prison, he told the FLDS community that the reason why he is not out of prison is because that they're not praying hard enough. And in the FLDS community, the rules are very, very strict because Warren Jeffs decides who marries who, in which he basically forces the daughters, or forces young women to marry people with their distant cousins, aunts, uncles, whatever. And also, he also decided that public school is a form of corruption, and many of the the children in the FLDS community are homeschooled. And since, as I said, the rules are strict, the children who are being homeschooled, some of the notebooks that they're using has a picture of Warren Jeffs' face on it, which indicates a form of superiority in which Warren Jeffs wants to, in a way, influence children that he is superior. And this sort of indicates a form of brainwashing, because one of the lessons that we're taught in the homeschooling of the FLDS community children is that Warren Jeffs is the president of the United States, even though we all know that that's not true. But along with that, Jeffs cuts off all sources of entertainment like dogs, toys, newspapers, internet, TV, birthday and Christmas celebrations, camping, and even parades and So the current polygamous groups, or another current polygamous group, is called the Kingston Clan, or the Order. Its headquarters is in Utah, and the current leader is John Daniel Kingston. He has 14 wives, and John Daniel Kingston opposed all charges against him regarding to child abuse, incest, and rape. He runs, along with many other people, secret cooperatives, which includes 23 companies, and it's really difficult to track because these 23 companies are gaining millions and millions of dollars, and running secret cooperatives is very illegal, so law enforcement's having difficulty to track it down. And with that, with running secret cooperatives and gaining millions of dollars, the Order, specifically this group, the Order, is very wealthy and more economically driven. Along with that, they're very similar with the FLDS, in which they decide like Kingston decides who marries who, or the young women marrying their male relatives. Along with that, there's several differences between the FLDS and the order. The order lives more in a modern society and they wear more modern clothing. And the order's method is to blend in with the modern society of the US so that the law enforcement won't suspect that they're doing anything wrong. And as I sort of mentioned earlier, the women in the FLDS wear clothing that resembles, or not women, men and women wear clothing resembling the clothes worn in the 1800s, and the FLDS is more considered more of an isolated community in contrast to the order. So, in conclusion, polygamy started by revelations created by Joseph Smith, and polygamy is considered illegal in the United States. So if you see or see polygamous activity, report to dependable law enforcement. And the two polygamous groups that are still active in the United States today are the FLES and the Order. They share the same ideals, but they live in two different societies. And with that, that is it on my presentation on polygamy in the United States, and I hope that you enjoyed.